When we last left off, Robin was dead. The Teen Titans Academy was dealing with Red X, and Harley Quinn was trying to build a support group. This is the Comicstorian channel, where I take some of your favorite trade paperbacks and single issues, and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Welcome back to our DC compilation episode. Every week, a bunch of comic books come out that are fun and really interesting to follow, and then the following week, I grab my favorite ones and make a video like this, helping you keep up to date as to what is happening in the world of comics as I'm building our next full story out of these. Today, we're going to be continuing with Robin 2, Teen Titans Academy number 3, and Harley Quinn number 3. When we last left off with Robin, he died. Flatline literally ripped his heart out of his chest. So let's see what's going on now as he's on an island for a tournament. Robin Issue 2. Damian lays on a slab, the wound in his chest quickly healing. As it heals up, he sits up in shock. "I'm embarrassed for you," Ravager calls from the doorway, and Damian looks at her in shock. "You wouldn't have died if you had just listened to me. Come on, let me give you a tour," she says to him, motioning for him to follow her out the door. As they walk down the beach, Damian realizes that no one can die on Lazarus Island. Ravager nods as she explains that it helps with the death tournament and allows people to show off their skills. Damian turns to see Flatline standing nearby. "Don't go falling in love with the first girl who kills you, pipsqueak," Ravager reminds her young friend. "Love is for fools. I want a rematch," Damian grumbles quietly. But Ravager explains that Damian really wants to know the rules, which Mother Soul explained after he had his heart ripped out by Flatline. Mother Soul gathered all of the fighters and explained the rules. No matter how horrific the death, you will be resurrected, but you get 3 deaths and only 3 deaths. After each of you have died, the true tournament begins. Consider your first death a sparring match. If you wish to leave after your second death, no one will judge you. But if you die 3 times, your soul will leave you forever. Combat must only occur when the sun shines on Lazarus Island. The last survivor will become a legend and be awarded the greatest prize, immortality. Damian stops and turns to Ravager, a strange look appearing on his face. "You're saying I don't have to hold back?" he questions, and he suddenly moves fast, sharp batarangs in his hands as he leaps through the air. "Game on!" he shouts. The first 2 go quickly, with Damian kicking them apart, throwing knives into their throats. He keeps moving, with one of the fighters trying to run, but Damian lands on his head, driving his face into the ground with a sickening crunch. Batarang stabbing into a pair of the twins' foreheads, dropping them instantly, and as another tries to fight back, Damian flips and twists around him, reaching down, grabbing a hold of a katana. The others charge at him, trying to team up to stop his slaughter, but the blade flashes through the air, cutting them apart. Finally, Damian stops. He's barely breathing heavy as he looks at the carnage that he has created. "I always feel better after a warm-up." He nods, tossing the sword at the ground by Flatline, staring at her, making the motion that he is waiting for her. She smiles, winking at him. Ravager shakes her head as she comes over, picking up the sword. "Okay, Bird Boy, you proved your point. Everyone here knows that you're a real killer. You did it. Bravo." She explains that he'll need more than that to live here, though, and begins to point out his top 5 threats on the island. Respawn, a new fighter, chaotic and undisciplined. Just like, she says, pointing at the young fighter that dresses like Deathstroke. Double XL, 10 years old, his ego makes you look humble. Comes with an entourage that pumps him up. They're insufferable. She explains as she points at the young kid that is punching someone into the sand. Flatline, Lord Deathman's new sidekick you've already met. Black Swan, former ballerina who now sees the art of killing as a dance. And finally, she points to Damian's biggest challenge on the island, Hawk. The League of Shadows brought him. They watch as Hawk defeats his opponent. He stops short of killing him, bringing shouts of protest from the League of Shadows members, and with a sigh, the young man breaks his opponent's neck. Damian scoffs as he heads off to find his stuff. His duffel bag is waiting where he left it. Begins to look inside to make sure that nothing is stolen, and Ravager takes out a manga that Damian had been reading. "Wow, I always took you for an Art of War kind of kid," she jokes before he can snatch the manga back from her. "It's personal," he snaps at her before demanding to know why she's on the island. "Oh, I'm not here for the tournament. Living forever seemed boring to me. I have other interests," she vaguely explains. She smiles, telling him that she can help him out, train him. He looks at her for a moment before turning away. "No thanks. Son of Batman, remember?" he calls over his shoulder. And that night, Damien slips over the walls into the heart of the island where he follows two of Mother Soul's men as they make their way through the city streets, and he suddenly pauses. "You really think that you can sneak up on me?" he asks as he looks over his shoulder to see Flatline, who just smiles. "I'll put my knives away if you do." "What do you want?" He growls at her, and she begins to follow him, explaining that she felt that they should update their relationship from enemies to frenemies. They continue to follow the thugs, watching as they open up a secret passageway, and Damien and Flatline continue to follow them inside of the secret chamber. "This is my first secret passage," Flatline says with glee. "Just keep quiet," Damien hisses at her. Inside, they find a chamber dominated by a huge Lazarus pit, the statue of a demon lord watching over it. Mother Soul stands with her men as they explain that the pit is too unstable. "This is the biggest Lazarus pit that I've ever seen. Is this why Mother kept the League of Lazarus hidden from me?" Damien questions, and Mother Soul continues to look into the glowing green liquid, assuring the priests that they will have everything that they'll need soon. Weird. Are they doing experiments on it? Flatline asks, and then she turns to where Damien was to find the young man is now gone. Like father, like son. Cute. Flatline says with a smile. Damien heads back towards the barracks, and the voice of the dead Alfred fills his head, warning him to seek aid in solving this case. Mid-leap, Damien is suddenly captured by a net, falling to the ground, and he quickly cuts his way free, standing to meet his attacker. "All I was saying is you're still too cocky to win this tournament, shorty. If you want to win, you're gonna need my help. Period." Ravager states as she steps out of the shadows. She explains that Damien thinks that no one would dare get the drop on him, and that he takes himself too seriously. She begins to lead him across the island, finally stepping on the beach to the site and the sounds of fighters relaxing and having a good time. "I know you've been trained to be the best of the best, but that's not enough. Not here. I need to teach you something that Batman was incapable of teaching you. How to have fun." We now cut over to Teen Titans Academy, issue number 3. Nightwing and Starfire have turned the Teen Titans into a school, and the first 2 issues introduced us to the new cast. And at the end of the last issue, Red X appeared. We discovered that Nightwing used to be Red X and then retired the title, but someone else has taken the title and is using it to mess with the Teen Titans. Images appear on the screen, a demon standing over the city, the Titans becoming sort of demons, failure, Red X standing before a monster. Raven looks up at her friends and teammates, and Nightwing looks back from the table. "I think we can assume that Red X is human. What about Billy?" he asks, but Donna shakes her head, believing that there is no way that Billy Batson would become Red X. The group sit around the table discussing who could possibly be Red X. Now that somebody has taken up the mantle of Red X and is using it to mess with Teen Titans, they need to resolve this. They also wonder if it was right to tell their students that they knew the villain's identity even though they didn't. Garth looks at his friend, putting his hand on her shoulder, asking if she's okay. "I think we need to check on the kids," Raven whispers, but Cyborg looks at her, pointing out that the kids are safe in Titan's Tower and that the upperclassmen have been put in charge. They need to focus on their mission of getting meta-refugees from Markovia. "Are we really going to sacrifice these kids for one of Ray's little premonitions?" he asks the group, and Garth begins to get mad, but Raven stops him. She explains that she doesn't quite know what she saw, but it feels like something bad is coming. "Come on, you should go lay down," Garth tells her as he leads her out of the room, looking back angrily. "The kids are going to be fine. No one can get inside of the tower," Cyborg points out to the others. Meanwhile, back with the Suicide Squad, "This is a bad call," Peacemaker says, looking at Red X in their helicopter. "I don't care what you think about the call, just so long as you remember that it's mine," Waller tells him over the radio, and she orders the squad to use Red X to get past the tower defenses, noting that he could make a good replacement for Talon if the villain should suddenly go crazy. "Fine, but I'm running this my way. These are kids, Waller. We're breaking into a kid's school." "They're weapons, like you, Peacemaker. I'd remember that," she tells him before cutting the signal. Inside of the tower, Crush stands over the terminal waiting for her shift to end, and she hits the button, receiving another message from her father. "Family stuff?" a voice asks as she rips the earbuds from her head, whirling at the speaker. "Don't sneak up on people!" she shouts at Roundhouse, who looks very startled. Red Arrow and Kid Flash walk in behind them, asking what the commotion is. "Nothing! Literally nothing! I don't know why we're pretending that these command shifts matter. Whatever, I'm out!" Crush shouts as she storms off. In the dormitories, Bolt and Summer can't seem to sleep. What I don't understand is why you haven't told the Titans about what happened in the city, about the Suicide Squad trying to get you. Summer tells her friend, but Bolt shakes her head, explaining that the people that attacked her work for very dangerous people from her past. The Titans knew about my connection to Waller. I would be expelled, she says, sitting up in her bed, explaining that the place that she comes from is full of good people, but that her family isn't one of them. Once she discovered her speed powers by mesmerizing the speed equation, her parents used her as a runner. What she didn't realize is that her parents worked in moving stolen goods. Eventually, their debts caught up with Bolt. She lost her legs. Afterwards, she was left for dead, but a government agent came to her and offered her a new life in a new home. She enrolled me at the Titans Academy on the condition that the instant that she called, I would come running, Bolt explains, and with her story complete, Bolt pulls herself from bed, remembering that she left her blades in her locker. Summer follows her out of the bed, trying to tell her friend to come clean with the Titans. They'll be able to help her. I'll try not to wake you when I come back in. Good night, Bolt says as she steers her wheelchair out of the room. Above the tower, the Suicide Squad parachutes in as Red X explains that he'll be able to mask their biosignatures once they're inside. They hit the roof and he pulls up one of the entrance hatches. Remember, it's important to stay close, he hisses at the supervillains, and he leads them downstairs past the doors marked for the dormitory. Why are we passing the dormitory level? Peacemaker demands. Because she isn't in her room, Red X says simply, and they keep moving. But Red X suddenly turns, looking at the group. Wait, where's... he begins. Superboy stayed behind, staring at an old picture of him with the Titans. The security systems turn, scanning that he is an intruder, and alarms begin to blare throughout the tower, waking up the students. So much for the element of surprise. You were supposed to stay close, moron! Peacemaker shouts at Superboy, and inside of the command center, Gorilla Greg can sense the intruder's minds in the tower. I'll lint it down here! Summer shouts to the others, and in the lower levels, a Bolt has already hit the ground, her wheelchair a mangled mess as Red X stands over her. What are you waiting for? Kill me if that's why you're here. I'm not going to kill you, but they might, he says, pointing behind her. You work for her? Alenta demands, turning back to Red X. Yeah, and now you will too. Everyone joins the squad. That's how it works, Peacemaker tells her as he moves to grab her, but suddenly a chain wraps around his hands. Yeah? Well, let me show you how this goes. Crush snaps. She turns, flinging Peacemaker into a wall as Wally and Roundhouse rush in. Superboy, what's going on? Why are you with this trash? Wallace asks as he looks at his old friend on the Suicide Squad. The two groups clash in the tower, but they're quickly joined by the rest of the Titans Academy. The radio crackles as Waller demands a report from Peacemaker, but the man is busy getting his face punched in by Crush. Talon, remove the assets now, any cost. Kill every last one of them for all I care. Waller shouts over the radio, and Talon begins to move quickly through the teens, snapping out attacks left and right. Crush and Red X leap to stop the Psycho as he moves through their friends. It's his handler. She's letting him off the leash. Red X shouts as he orders Bolt and Kid Flash to get everyone to safety. You're protecting them! Peacemaker snaps as he punches Red X in the jaw. He slams his fist into the teen's stomach, demanding an extraction from Waller, when suddenly Warp appears before the team and begins to pull them all out, with Peacekeeper hefting Red X onto his shoulder. Don't let them get away! Crush shouts as she grabs Talon and slams him into the wall. She slams him again and again until her friends are yelling for her to stop. Release him, Crush, now! Starfire calls from behind her, where the Titans have now all teleported in. He tried to kill us! He's a murderer! Crush shouts over her shoulder, but while she isn't paying attention, Warp returns and teleports Talon away. I had him, and you distracted me. You let him get away. Crush shouts at her teachers. She yells at them for believing that she was going to kill him, for thinking that she was like Lobo, her father. Finally, she turns. I quit, she shouts as she storms out of the room. Later, as everyone sits in the cafeteria and tries to recover from their ordeal, Garth sits with Raven, pointing out that her premonition was right, but she shakes her head. Garth, the big scary stuff I've been seeing? I think it's already here, she whispers to him. Lastly, we have Harley Quinn, issue number 3. Harley has turned over a new leaf ever since the Joker War, deciding that she's practically going to join the Bat Family, even if the Bat Family's unaware of that. She's decided to take it upon herself to travel the city of Gotham trying to stop the clowns, the people who did things under the Joker's name during the Joker War, and bring them to justice since she's been pardoned from everything. She's even recruited her own sidekick. Now let's check in with Harley. No, make it stop! The man with the clown tattoos shouts from the table, bucking and kicking at the nurses and his restraints. But Hugo Strange isn't listening. He's paying attention to the vitals, ordering the others to keep up the patient's dosage. The vitals begin to drop, and the nurse moves to administer a sedative. Not yet, Strange orders as he turns and begins to walk away. He turns in dismay as the vitals tank. It's still too strong. How long until our next shipment, Lockwood? He asks his right-hand man, and Lockwood shakes his head, explaining that if Hugo wants modifications on the drugs, it'll take a little bit longer. They continue to talk as the nurses fight against the clown, his body spasming from his vitals dropping. Moving down the outside hallway, Hugo Strange orders Lockwood to give the lab an incentive to get the shipment to them on time, with modifications to the formula. And as they reach the elevator, Lockwood informs Strange that they discovered Harley Quinn's location. Good. It's time to make an example of Quinn, and I'd like you to see her retrieval personally. That clown won't make us look like a joke again. Strange smiles as the elevator closes on his cruelly smiling face. Elsewhere in Gotham, Harley pushes open the door to her meeting room. Welcome to the first ever community support group for... She shouts with joy, but the smile drops from her face as she looks around and sees Kevin standing alone amongst the empty chairs, a coffee and donut in his hand. Maybe they're just like fashionably late? Kevin points out as he takes a bite. But Harley shakes her head, pointing out that the rule is to be late for parties, not for emotional support groups for people who used to work for a homicidal maniac in a clown costume. She tells him with a sigh, and she leans over a chair, thinking that her support group idea was probably just a dumb idea. Quietly, a voice reaches out to them from the door. Excuse me? Is this a support group? Are we in the right place? A woman asks, with a few others in the parking lot behind her. Harley smiles as she ushers the woman in, telling her that she is in the right place. I told you they'd show up, Kev, she whispers as they walk in and take their seats. Everyone gets coffee and donuts, and Harley prepares to lead her first session. As everyone stares at her, she pulls out her cards and rattles off her first opening. Thank you all for coming. I'm Harley Quinn, and I'm an addict. Addict to positive mental health, that is, she says with a beaming smile. Everyone just stares at her. You know what? Just forget it. She tells them, her smile fading, and she looks around the group and becomes serious, explaining that while she was a member of the Joker's gang, she was also a psychiatrist, which makes her suited to help people get through their trauma, help them find the support that they need, or maybe just someone to share a coffee with that understands what you're going through. She looks around at the people, asking if anyone wants to introduce themselves and speak up. Finally, Eric speaks up. He stumbles over his words about what happened during the Joker War, how Joker got into his head, twisted him up, made him do things. I keep thinking that Hugo has a point. Maybe the clowns don't deserve to be normal. They don't, a large man in a hoodie says from his chair, and everyone looks at him in shock as he leans back, informing them, clowns don't deserve a normal life. You deserve to be locked up in a padded cell. Harley pauses as she recognizes the voice. Wait, Lockheed? She says, demanding to know what he's doing at our meeting. Lockheed stands up, explaining that he is there to help bring criminals to justice. And suddenly, the meeting room doors bust open, and a group of orderlies come charging in, armed with tasers. You shouldn't fight it, Harley. We're just here to help, Lockheed explains to her as the orderlies grab the support group, shocking them, tying them up. You've got a weird idea of what help looks like, she shouts, and she leaps to help the group, kicking out the orderlies as she grabs one of the tasers, shocking another one. This is the worst therapy session ever! One of the women shouts as the orderlies begin to drag them out the door to a waiting van. Lockheed pulls out his own taser, shooting it at Harley, sending volts coursing through her body. She hits the ground, spasming as the electricity hits her, and the orderlies continue to drag them all outside, stuffing the others into a waiting van. As her head bumps against the pavement, Harley suddenly comes to, a wicked smile crossing her face. You were always my favorite, Lockheed. My favorite to imagine beating savagely with various pieces of landscaping equipment, she shouts as she kicks out against the orderlies that are carrying her. She ducks under their attacks, punching them both in the face. Reaching down, she pulls off one of the tasers. You shouldn't fight change, Harley, Lockheed calls as she leaps across the parking lot. I'm not! I'm fighting a clearly delusional Hugo Strange wannabe! She ducks, flipping over Lockheed's attacks, jumping onto his shoulders and beginning to pummel him against his head. As Lockheed throws her away and orders the orderlies to escape in the vans, Harley shouts as she gives chase after Kevin and her support group. Kevin, never get into a van with strangers, she yells as she leaps and jumps onto the side of the van, punching through the window and begins to struggle with the orderly in the passenger seat. Over her shoulder, she sees Lockheed gaining on them in his car. These ride shares are getting intense, she jokes, and as they screech through traffic, Harley leaps from the van onto Lockheed's car and begins to slam her taser against his windshield. "I'm coming in! Hands on 10 and 4!" she shouts at the villain, and she looks up, leaping away as Lockheed slams the car into a barrier. He struggles from the crash, shouting that they'll find Harley. But as she escapes, slipping away into the storm drain nearby, she begins to quietly make her way through the sewage, stopping, with a low growl reaching her ears. "Croc, if that's you, I'm not baking you another cake," she whispers into the dark. "Born on Monday," Grundy shouts from over her shoulder. Fear fills Harley as she turns to see the large, undead monster. "Hey, Grundy, old pal, how's the sewer? Seems unusually crowded down here lately," she says sheepishly as the monster looms over her. And that is the continuation of the Harley Quinn storyline in the new DC Infinite Frontier universe. I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 storylines, telling us how Robin came back to life, what's going on with Teen Titans Academy, and Harley Quinn. If you're curious, the Teen Titans Academy storyline is also crossing over with the Crush and Lobo storyline, which I guess is where Crush went, and it's also crossing over with the Suicide Squad storyline, which is how Red X popped up in both of those. So if you want to keep up to date, make sure you check back here every Friday and Saturday to see what's going on in the world of DC Comics, as it seems like one of those stories comes out on a weekly basis, and we are covering it right here. Don't forget, if you want to have a say in what happens here at Comicstorian and get a vote on the big stories that come to the channel, consider going to our Patreon and joining our mini producer tier. It's there that you can vote on things such as Batman Inc., which happens on Sundays, or stuff like Moon Knight, or what's coming this week, Vote Loki. Thank you guys so much for your continued support, and we'll see you next time right here at the Comicstorian channel.